When I finally decided that I would go to Sundarbans to spend a few days, all I wanted to do was to chill out into the jungles, away from the chaos of the city life. But one thing led to another, and finally I thought I could share my experience with others. To me, traveling with a fixed destination and a definite plan has never been exciting, and during my travel, I'm always on the lookout for incidents. And the first one took place almost at the beginning of my travel, if I can at all call it an incident. After a smooth train ride to Cannings, there is a series of boat rides that one has to take to reach Sundarbans. Very much understandable due to the geographic location of this place. And of course, between these boat rides, one has to cover a lot of land, which is generally done by a peculiar vehicle locally called machine van. So during one of these rides, I happened to meet Razia, a Muslim girl who was traveling with her elder sister to her relative's place. For me, she was one of the many mediums to gather information about the place, but our conversation led us to a point where she couldn't help but to invite me to her place, and I couldn't help but to accept it. It was a small sleepy village of Muslim community, and not many outsiders were seen there. In spite of that, the family gave me a very warm welcome, and I got to taste the first experience of a Bengal village. Delicious lunch was served, and in spite of the repeated requests of Razia and her family to spend the night at their place, I somehow declined it and moved on in the late afternoon towards Sunderban, but only after promising them that I would pay a visit on my way back. And after a couple of boat and land rides, I was on the last lap of my journey when I met Kumaresh, a fine young gentleman who doesn't mind helping others and in the process making small profits for himself too. Well, we came to a mutual understanding and I landed up at his place, which was situated just on the opposite banks of Sunderban. Till this time, it was pure fun I was looking for. But once I settled and Kumaresh introduced me to a couple of villages, suddenly my travel seemed to be taking a shape. Every story was woven on the backgrounds of Sunderban, of which tiger being the prime focus. But fishing, poaching, the story of sanctuary and reserve forest, all were interesting. But amongst them, there was one story which got my full attention. It is called Mahol. In the beginning, I couldn't understand anything, but then I was explained that it is the expedition into the forest to collect honey, and further I was explained the dangers involved into it. That night, in the darkness of the village and in the middle of the tiger calls from the opposite jungle, my next few days' action were planned. Early next morning, Kumaresh took me to a village called Dayapur and further into a place called Jamespur. It was over here that I learned a lot about Sundarban, about its inhabitants, and above all, about life.
কিছু বলছি না, আমি দেখেছি তো আমি কিছু বলছি না, তো ও রিপোর্ট দিকেছে এইরকম হয়েছে।
The scars of living on the edge of Sundarban was there, on the faces of the widows who lost their husband to the tigers, on the children who lost their father, and on the lucky few who escaped from the jungle, but only after being left wounded mentally and physically for the rest of their lives. Well, just now we have come to this place where this lady was being attacked by the tiger around 5 years ago, and what she said I couldn't understand, but what I got from it is that she was sitting somewhere outside her house, and suddenly she felt that somebody is kind of fingering her hair, and she couldn't understand what it was, and she turned back and she saw the tiger, and she was absolutely amazed. She still got the scars back at her head somewhere. It was a very new experience for me and any city dwellers for whom tigers were always behind bars of a zoo. Out here people lived and died with it every day, and most of the victims were the one who went to the jungle to collect honey. Well, this is Kinaram Mistry, and he was being attacked by a tiger in the jungle when he went to collect some honey around few years back, and he was being attacked by a tiger, and he is quite a face into the circle of the journalists or the reporters that come here. But when I approached him for a small introduction or a small movie of his, he said he was quite annoyed, and he said that why should I give an introduction, why should I give an interview to you people? Well, don't work, I mean nothing happens, what is the point of giving it? So well, I'll just switch on the camera to him so that he can speak his mind out.
ক্যামেরায় উঠবো, কাজে আমার তো কিছু প্রাপ্য থাকার দরকার। ঠিক আছে, আমি সেই প্রাপ্য যদি না পাই তা শুধু ফটো উঠে লাভ হয়? কোনো লাভ আছে? ধরো এই আমার এই বাঘে ধরার দাগ, এইসব দাগ দিয়েছি, এই আমার তখন এই কপাল ব্যাটে মাথা ব্যাটে কামড়ে দিয়েছে। আচ্ছা, তখন ওই শ্বাস নলি যখন চাপি ধরলাম তখন ও হা ঘুরিয়ে মাথাটা ছাড়িয়ে দিল, ছাড়িয়ে দিলি আমি তো আর ছাড়বো না। ওর পয়সনের লোক ছিল, সেই লোকে লাঠি দেয়, লাঠি দিলি ও তখন লাঠ খেয়ে গেছে।
Well, this is Kamla Raftan, and she is one of the victims of Sunderban, but not exactly tiger. In fact, she was pulled by a crocodile into the river. There were others who were attacked in their backyard.
সকালে জাল ধরতে গিয়েছিলাম, যাওয়ার পরে কুট আমার পিছনে ছিল, যদিও আমি লক্ষ্য করতে পারিনি, না পারার জন্য আমার লক্ষ্যই করিনি। তো কুড়ির দিকে আমি জাল দিতে নেমেছি, নামার সময় মনে হয় যেন তুলে নিয়ে চলে যাচ্ছে, আমি তখন ভাবছি যে তাই তো।
After spending the whole morning and afternoon with the victims, it was getting too much for me, and like a perfect host, Kumaresh understood my mind and gave me a much sought after relief. Coincidentally, his in-laws' place was just nearby, and he invited me there. And we spent our late afternoon at this place, taking a dip into the family pond, having variety of fish for lunch, and finally ending it with the fresh plucked coconut water, which was more of a necessity than a choice, because my hosts didn't want me to have the pond water to drink, which they do in their everyday life, since the village doesn't have a freshwater medium. I thought the day had come to an end, but one more event took place in the late evening. Actually, there is no electricity around Kumaresh's place, and I had to cover quite a distance to charge my battery every day, since I didn't have a spare battery, and this is what happened. Hi. Funny thing happened just now that I have come to charge the battery and I forgot the cord through which I could charge the battery, and you can imagine it's around 30 minutes of rickshaw van on which you have to come here, and then you forget the battery charger. Well, life gives you everything except what you ask for, and the next day was a perfect example to prove this saying right. I was very excited and charged up, because for the first time in my whole trip, I was going to have a chance to get a glimpse of the wild animals of Sunderban. I rented a boat and went to the towers set up by the forest officials to have my share of viewing of the animals. And this is, I can say, the most disappointing part of my travel. Not because I couldn't get a glimpse of the Royal Bengal tiger, but because tourism is so poorly developed in a place which is on the world map. Not even once a tourist gets to feel that he is in a jungle. Although the man-made pond across the tower does attract few water monitors, wild boar, jungle fowl and deers, but it's so artificial that one cannot distinguish much between a zoo and this place. After the disappointment, I returned back to my humble abode and slept like a baby for the next 12 hours, little knowing what was in store for me the next day. The new day came with a new aspect of this lively place. Having made quite a good number of friends in these days, I happened to come to know about a different kind of entertainment the locals indulge themselves into. In fact, I came to know about two ways, one of them being the cockfight. I was invited by a friend of mine to attend a cockfight in the late afternoon. Upon reaching the place, I was quite amazed at the number of people present there, in spite of lacking any kind of advertising medium that we city people are used to for knowing about any event. The whole afternoon I covered this ancient way of life. Which must be prevalent for ages, and I almost got sick seeing the wounded cocks, but the crowd was cheering at every wound inflicted by the birds. Very understandable due to the way of life around this place, which was not very far from death, and tiger not being the only reason. This being the first kind of entertainment I was speaking about, and the second followed in the late evening. My local friends took me to a small place just a few kilometers of walk again to have the best locally made liquor called hari. This liquor is made by rice, and after gulping few glasses, the effect was quite evident on my friends.
একটা কথা বলছি
हाँ बोलो।
बोलता को बंगाली में बोलता को बोलता बोलता है।
अच्छा,
हिंदी में बोलता को क्या बोलता है?
This is how the last day came to an end, and early morning the next day I left for civilization. But this trip seemed not to come to an end. On my way back, I realized that I had to visit Razia. Which I did, and words are not enough to explain their joy upon seeing me. That day they didn't listen to any of my excuse, and I had to spend the night at their place. They gave me a farewell dinner, and it was one of the best cooked food I had in my life. They were poor simple people with modest resources, but seeing my dinner plate, I could feel that they have gone out of their way to being a good host. Early the next morning, I left for Calcutta, and 4 children of the family, aged between 6 to 18, including Razia, came to see me off at the boat station. I left with a heavy heart and promised myself that I would surely visit this mysterious place called Sunderban again and